Greetings, everyone! And I do have to apologize, first of all, for the fact that I was going to do a Top Cow character, but then, some complications came along, not just from the bulletin that I posted, but also I found a lot of conflicting information, guys, so I do apologize about that. It probably will be a while before I actually do any of the Top Cow characters so I can find a lot of reliable sources. But I figure with the movie being out and me going to see it Wednesday and stuff, I figured that I would instead push back Deadpool's video and actually talk about this guy right here. Yes, that's right. The second video and the independent character, quote-unquote, that I'm going to be talking about today is none other than Judge Joseph Dredd. And I probably sound like I'm speaking a tad bit softly, guys. It's because this is a late-night recording. So, if I speak like I'm a little bit low, I do apologize. You may have to turn up your volume a little bit. But anyway, I'm dabbling on. Let's get into this. Now, Dredd was created as part... Now, Judge Dredd was... Dredd's first appearance was in 2000 AD number 2 in March of 1977. And 2000 AD was actually a British comic book magazine series. They also did Barbed Wire and many other characters. But I'll get into that much later throughout possibly the seasons and seasons following. He was created by John Wagner, who was the writer, Carlos Izcoria, who was the artist, and Pat Mills, who was the editor, but also the partial conceptual artist for Dredd. His team affiliations is that it was Mega City 1 Justice Department, the Academy of Law, and the Lunar 1 Justice Department. His known alias is the Dead Man. His abilities are that he's an excellent marksman, expert in unarmed combat, has bionic eyes granting 20/20 night vision, and reduced blinking rate. Here we go. When Pat Mills was developing 2000 AD in 1976, he brought in his former partner John Wagner to develop characters. Wagner had written Dirty Harry-esque tough cop stories for other titles, and suggested a character who took that concept to its logical extreme, imagining an ultra-violent law enforcement officer patrolling a futuristic New York City with the power to administer instant justice. Mills had developed a horror strip called Judge Dredd, but abandoned the idea as unsuitable for the new comic. But the name, with the spelling modified to Dredd at the suggestion of sub-editor Calvin Gosnell, was adopted by Wagner for his Ultimate Lawman. The task of visualizing the character was given to Carlos Izcoria, a Spanish artist who had worked with Mills before on Battle Picture Weekly. Wagner gave Carlos an advertisement for the film Death Race 2000 showing the character Frankenstein, played by David Carradine, clad in black leather on a motorcycle as a suggestion for what the character should look like. Carlos elaborated this greatly, adding body armor, zips, and chains, which Wagner initially thought to be over the top. Wagner's initial script was rewritten by Mills and drawn up by Carlos, but when the art came back, a rethink was necessary. The hardware and cityscapes Carlos had drawn were far too futuristic for the near-future setting originally intended. But Mills decided to run with it and set the strip further into the future. By this stage, Wagner had quit, disillusioned that a proposed buyout of the new comic by another company, which would have given him and Mills a greater financial stake in the comic, had fallen through. Mills was reluctant to lose Judge Dredd and farmed the strip out to a variety of freelance writers, hoping to develop it further. These scripts were given to a variety of artists, of artists, as Mills tried to find a strip which would provide a good introduction to the character, all which meant that Judge Dredd would not be ready for the first issue of 2000 AD, launched in February 1977. The story chosen to introduce the character was submitted by Peter Harris and extensively rewritten by Mills. It was drawn by newcomer Mike McMahon. The strip debuted in issue number 2, but Carlos, angry that another artist had drawn the first publicized strip, quit and returned to work for Battle. Wagner soon returned to the character. Starting in issue 10, his Robot War storyline was drawn on a revolving team of artists, Carlos included, and marked the point where Dredd became the most popular character in the comic, a position he has rarely relinquished. The characters appeared in almost every issue since, the bulk of stories written by Wagner in collaboration with Alan Grant, which was between the years 1980 and 1988. Since 1990, there we go, Dredd has also headlined his own title named the Judge Dredd magazine. With Wagner concentrating his energies there, the Dredd strip in 2000 AD was left to younger writers such as Garth Ennis, Mark Millar, Grant Morrison, and John Smith. Their efforts were not popular with fans, and sales fell. Wagner returned to writing the character full-time in 1994. Judge Dredd has also been published in a long-running comic strip from 1981 to 1998 in the Daily Star, and briefly in Metro from January 2004 to 2005. These were usually created by the same teams writing and drawing the main strip, and the Daily Star strips have been collected in a number of volumes. Dredd is the most famous of the elite corps of street judges that run Mega City 1. Charged with the power not only to enforce the law, but also to instantly convict and sentence offenders, and occasionally even execute them, Judge is armed with a lawgiver pistol programmed to recognize only his palm print and capable of firing 6 different types of ammunition. A day stick, a knife, stun gun, gas grenades. His helmet obscures all of his face except for his mouth and jaw. He rides a large Lawmaster motorbike, which has machine guns, a powerful laser cannon, and fully artificial intelligence capable of responding to orders from the judge and operating itself. Dredd's entire face is not shown properly in the strip. This custom began as an unofficial guideline, but soon became a rule which artists were required to follow. As Wagner explained, it sums up the facelessness of justice. Justice has no soul. So it isn't necessary for readers to see Dredd's face, and I don't want you to. On very rare occasions, Dredd's face has been shown in flashbacks to where he was a child, in pictures lacking in detail. In an early story in issue 8, Dredd is forced to remove his helmet, and the other characters react as if he is disfigured, but Dredd's face was covered by a fax censorship sticker. In only one other issue has Dredd's face been on view. In issue 52, during Dredd's tenure on the lunar colonies, he uses a face change machine to impersonate the crooked lawyer of a gang of bank robbers. An aborted idea was to have Dredd as a non-white character. In Carlos's original design, he drew Dredd with large lips to put a mystery as to what his racial background was. Not all artists who worked on the strip were told. As a result, Mike McMahon spent 4 months drawing Dredd as a black man, while Brian Boland and Ron Smith drew him as a white man. As the strip was not printed in color, this went unnoticed and the idea was dropped. Time passes in the Judge Dredd strip in real time, as a year passes in real life, a year goes by in the comic. Thus, the first Judge Dredd story, published in 1977, was set in the year 2099, and stories published in 2012 are spent in 2134. Consequently, as former editor Alan McKenzie explains, every year that goes by Dredd gets a year older. Dredd gets a year older. Unlike Spider-Man, who has been a university student for the past 25 years, Dredd is over 70 years old, with over 50 years of active service. And for some characters in the comic have even mentioned that Dredd is not as young and as fit as he used to be. This remains a theme in some recent issues. in 2008, in issue 1595, I doubt that that's actually the actual number, I would think, but I'm just going to roll with that. Dredd is diagnosed with cancer. It is not known whether there are any long-term plans to address this issue, though Mega City 1 does have cloning and brain transplant technology. In an interview with Empire, Wagner made the statement that there could be many ways to end it, but the possibility is that I won't still be around when it happens. I would love to write it, but I can't see it happening. I'll leave the script in my will. And here's a biography of Dredd. But first, let me check this. Here we go. Okay. Senior Judge Joseph Dredd and his brother Rico Dredd were cloned from the DNA of Chief Judge Fargo, the first Chief Judge, in 2066. Their growth was artificially accelerated so that they emerged with an apparent psychological age of 5, with all the appropriate knowledge for their age electronically implanted into their brains by computer during gestion. The name Dredd was chosen by the genetic scientist who created them, Morton Judd, to instill fear in the population. In 2070, they saw action for the first time during the Atomic Wars. When as cadets they were temporarily assigned the rank of full judge and sent to restore order to the panic-stricken streets. Distinguishing themselves, they were chosen to take part in assaulting the White House when the Justice Department disposed of President Booth. They were fast-tracked through the Academy of Law, Joe graduating second in his class in 2079, Rico becoming the first. Later that year, Joe was forced to arrest his brother Rico for murder and corruption. He excelled as a judge, quickly gaining promotion to the rank of senior judge. Offered the opportunity to become a chief judge in 2101, he declined, preferring to serve on the streets enforcing the law. On several different occasions, he saved the city from conquest or complete destruction by powerful enemies, and in 2114, he almost single-handedly saved the world from being destroyed during World War IV. Though Dredd puts his duty to uphold the law above anything else, this devotion is not blind loyalty. On 2 occasions, in 2099 and 2112, Dredd resigned from the force on points of principle, but both times he returned to the fold. In 2113, had to count there for a second, Dredd insisted that the Justice Department gamble its very existence on a referendum to pose its legitimacy as a form of government. In 2116, he risked 20 years imprisonment with hard labor when he challenged the policy of a chief judge that he was unable to support. In 2129, he threatened to resign to persuade another chief judge to challenge the city's harsh anti-mutant laws. After 50 years of active service, Dredd's career may be drawing to a close. In 2130, he was diagnosed with cancer, though it is said to be operable. In 2132, he was appointed to the Council of Five, Mega City 1's highest governing body, on which he served 2 years. He has a lot of family and associates, though I am not going to run through them. But he has a niece, he has his brother Rico, who he was forced to kill in self-defense. There was a clone that called himself Rico. There was Judge Anderson, Judge Hershey. There was the Fargo clan, who are mutants. There was apparently a teenage judge that since 2007, Dredd has made a protege. Dredd's mentor. Just a lot of other things. They talk about, of course, the judge system, and how Dredd's world works. It's basically just the rest of this is information on kind of the world of Dredd. And there are some important storylines as well, but I'm sure a lot of you guys can do a lot of the research on that. So that's basically about it, guys. That's it for, Judge Dredd. A little bit, giving you the comic book origins of Dredd. So hopefully you guys actually enjoyed this, quick little vid, and hopefully you found it very informational, as with all my other videos. And so I'll just leave you with this image here from good old Sly Stallone. And I look forward to at least letting you guys know what I think of the new Dredd movie. So with that, guys, Judge Dredd. Highly lesser known in pop culture, but his comic book origins are very much not all that known. But nevertheless, I don't need to say it, but at the same time, I will anyway. Dredd is a very awesome hero. So, take care, guys.